Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Howdy Partner. My name is James Spencer. I am a partner solutions architect with the Scale PSA team here at AWS. And today we're going to be joined by our friends at Tines and Lacework. And they are going to be teaching us how to keep our workloads secure, keep everything going, and just see what they can offer and help us with our security. I'm going to be joined by Mr. Dan and Mr. Dan right here. And my co-host Kruthi is supposed to be here. I don't see her. We can bring her back in a second. Uh, but Dan, I don't. How should we go about this? Dan number one, Dan in the top right. Uh, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, what we're doing here, start off there. You're on mute, Mr. Dan. There we go.
I'm Dan. I work for Tines as a partnership engineering. One of my biggest things is to do complement integrations with the technology alliance vendors out there, and also to work with the channel partners to develop stories, along with helping them with security assessments if needed to build new use cases that are available based upon like the MIRE framework and helping them prioritize what use cases to build. Before then, I was in a mixture of in the Army, commercial, and government sector.
Nice.
I'll give it up to Dan.
And second Dan from Lacework, bottom screen Dan.
All right. So does that mean I'm Dan too then? I
Dan
can
too.
roll with that. Dan Daggett, nice to meet everybody. I've been at Lacework since January. Before this, most of my career was in the security side of things. I also worked for a ton of small companies where I was the developer, the operations person, and the security person. Prior to Lacework, I spent about 5 years in the SOAR marketplace, helping customers all over the world implement SOAR solutions. I went from that, which is like automating the response, to working at Lacework where we're automating the alert. So I'm super excited to talk with other Dan today and like talk about how our products work well together. Thank you, James.
Nice, awesome. And again, we are joined by the lovely Kruthi. She is my co-host, my teammate here at AWS. So before we get into the actual meat of everything, Kruthi, do you want to tell us a little bit about security? Like, I heard security is job zero. Does that mean it's like we don't care? It's not even on the map. Like, what does that mean? I've heard that being thrown around.
Yeah, sure, James. Yeah, we at AWS we talk a lot about security being job zero. But before I answer that question, does anybody on the chat want to take a guess at what job zero means at AWS? Do you think it's important to us, or do you think it's not really that important? What do you job zero the map? Okay.
Well, I did a little bit of programming, and don't arrays usually start at zero? I think that's what it is, or something. I don't know, unless you do one of those weird languages where they start at one, which we don't want to talk
Okay.
about.
Yeah, so let me just give a brief introduction of what job zero means at AWS. What we mean is it is one of the most important things at AWS. So it's even more important than any of our number one priorities. And that is why we stress so much about security being job zero. Does that answer your question, James?
I mean, what does that mean? I just put up a firewall and like no one can get into anything? Like, what is there anything that? How does AWS like help me? Do they have anything like to help me out?
Okay, so before I answer that, why don't we? Oh, whose responsibility do you think is security? Do you think it's AWS's responsibility, or do you think it's the customer's responsibility, or do you think both of us need to be involved in securing our environment? Anybody on the chat, you can feel free to answer if you.
Yeah, I've heard some buzzwords about that myself. I mean, it's probably a joint venture, I'm sure. That's what my guess would be.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. At AWS, we follow what is called as the shared responsibility model. and we at AWS are responsible for security of the cloud, while our customers would be responsible for security in the cloud. And you mentioned about a firewall and things like that, but there is a difference in the type of security that AWS and the customers are responsible for based on the services that they are opting. So, for example, if you take EC2, then AWS would be responsible for the infrastructure and the hardware and maintaining the facilities, etc. But the customer themselves, they would be responsible for managing the security groups. They would be responsible for managing the operating system, so patching them. So these are the differences. However, if you take an example of, let's say, S3, then the S3 is one of our object storage services. Then there, AWS would be managing the infrastructure, and we would be providing certain endpoints to our customers where they can upload and retrieve data. So that's the difference in how we provide security to our customers.
Awesome. So yeah, so it sounds like I feel pretty good about the way AWS handles security of the cloud. And I'm sure they give us lots of options to handle things in the cloud. There's services such as guard duty, shields, web application firewalls. Can't think of any more off the top of my head right now. There's auditing, CloudTrail, CloudWatch to give us metrics, all sorts of stuff. But they can get a little. There's a lot of them, so it's you can get hard to keep track of sometimes. And our friends and partners over at Tines and Lacework, I think they've got a way to kind of help us ease that transition, kind of bring everything together. The security services we do have at AWS, they're extensive, they're comprehensive, but you don't want to miss anything for sure, and you want to make it scalable and more easy for your people to handle it, because it's absolutely more important than anything. You hear about data breaches all the time. I'm not going to name names, they're always in the news. I don't need to, but there's always got to be something better out there. And that's why I'm going to turn it over to the Dans right now, and we'll just jump in from there if they want to show us what we got.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, James. You mentioned the shared responsibility model, and I actually heard just earlier today, I was on a call with an AWS architect who it sounded like even like a third of your portfolio are just security related things. Like there's a bunch of cool stuff I hadn't really seen. But because of the shared responsibility model, it also gives vendors and the people in charge of it like other options, right? So we can come in and we can approach this with different ways. Maybe if we have a bunch of expertise, we don't need like other options. Perhaps for a smaller team, right? And we do. So what I want to talk about first today was what we do at Lacework, and then other Dan's going to tie that into Tines and why it's a really good partnership. So can I share my screen here then, James? Is that part of what we're doing here? Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Excellent. Perfect. And so this link is scrolling at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and move on. But what I really want to talk about is Lacework, and Lacework as solving security as like a data problem. So we love data here at Lacework. We use Snowflake on the back end and give us all this data. And when we talk about this, generally I hear the way people use Lacework divided into like these 4 buckets I have up on my screen. Across the top, we have cloud accounts. And so here in the top right corner, we're talking AWS, we're talking analysts of your CloudTrail logs. So like EBA of like your CloudTrail logs. We'll do runtime analysis, we'll raise anomalies in your own behavior. So if somebody compromises, say, my account, that person's going to come in and they're going to do things absolutely different than I normally do. If nothing else, they're going to need to explore the environment a little bit. And that's exactly the kind of anomaly that we can raise from this top right corner. We also do daily scans of all of your resources, and then so we offer configuration compliance. Now, this is something that AWS itself also does. With all of these, where our value offering is that we've got all 4 of these pillars and we have links across them. So we can say this EC2 instance is open to traffic from the world, but also here's all the runtime activity from that. Like here's the workloads running on it, all their network connections and so on. And that squarely brings us down here to the bottom. So what I was just talking about is this bottom right-hand corner. So we collect data from your workloads. What are workloads? I don't care if it's a host. It could be a container that's orchestrated by Kubernetes. So you're using like EKS, like the Elastic Kubernetes service on AWS. Like we'll happily deploy a daemon set to that and then show you that visibility. So you'll see how the application talks, you'll see how the containers are talking, and then you'll see the Kubernetes layer as well. And then last, over here on this preventative side, along with compliance, we also offer like CVE and vulnerabilities. So we collect all of this data and then we bring it to you within an interface here. And that's really what I wanted to show you. I want to give you just enough context on Lacework so like you can be excited to see what Dan's going to do with this data.
Awesome. Yeah. And that looks, I just was looking it up right now. That sounds very similar, a lot of that stuff that we're looking at on your screen there, to the 5 main functions of the cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover.
Right.
So yeah, that absolutely sounds good. And it doesn't sound like something that you just, said, hey, this sounds good. It sounds like it's a very common and best practice thing that this is going to allow us to do.
Absolutely. And with security, it's just gotten more and more complicated. So it used to be like, I've been doing this for a long time. I used to be able to hold it in my head. Like that's just not possible anymore. So then it became, let's hire experts, but like the military is the only one doing a good job of training experts as far as I can see. So there's a shortage of that. So then what do I do? Like if I need to understand it, I need help in some way. And so I want to show you this in the interface. I'm going to go ahead and like right here into Lacework. And so this is a screen I've just logged in. It's kind of a view of everything. So remember, all 4 of these pillars here are going to be in the interface and related to each other. So for example, let's look at some of the application. Like this one I find interesting, not just for security people, but like operations people as well. And I'm going to go straight to the part I found most exciting, the part that got me to go interview for Lacework, and eventually, it's why I'm working here. And what we call this is our polygraph view. And so let me just kind of arrange this so you can see the traffic patterns here. And what this is from outside of our network, from like external all the way through, and how things are talking to each other. And we do this via an agent-based solution. And this speaks very much to how we're going to raise anomalies. So when I'm talking anomalies, I'm very much talking this right-hand side, the runtime side of things. So like your behavior has changed. Either the application behavior has changed, or you're inside of your cloud account, you're doing things differently. So this is how we do it. It's fairly simple on paper. It's the at scale that is the hard part. But we look at every hour for the last 3 months at default, and we have all that data for 3 months, and we look at the communication patterns, and like, has that changed? Is this hour any different than the last 3 months of hours? Yes. Well, let's raise that up. And I can show you an example here. Let me just kind of describe what we're looking at first. We have this e-commerce website here. In this case, it's vulnerable to something. There's a CVE out there, so it knows it, and I put a little exclamation point here. But the point is that this application here is the main interface to the rest of like my containerized network here. Like it reaches off to a login service. It talks to like an inventory service. It talks to an order service. And then the inventory talks to a database. And this one talks to a database as well. This is all normal behavior on this network. So it's mapped this out. And for what it's worth, this network's a lot bigger, and I've narrowed it in. Like you can search into your network and like raise things up. But to where I was going is we can take this, and then like I have another hour here where things went differently. And so here, 2 hours later, we have a couple things going on. We've got this known bad IP talking to one of our nodes here. Hover, you got it. Or not.
And how do we know it's bad? How did you know? What made you think it's bad?
Absolutely, right? Like I'm talking about anomalies, then I'm like, hey, there's no bad thing here. And we know this because the agent is watching every network connection that comes into like every process on your workloads. And since we see all that network traffic coming in, we absolutely go compare that to known bad lists. We go out to like known threat feeds, and we'll also alert on that. It's kind of part of the whole platform package deal. Yeah. But in the end, what happened is this known bad was able to reach past the front end website. It talked directly to a result site that it's never talked to before. And the communication patterns have changed. And we go another hour and we can see things are kind of going back to normal now. But the point really here is that we can see those behavioral changes. So it's simple, but like we can do that over 3 months or 6 months. And we do that at the top of every hour, compare it to all the rest of the time. And we do this not just for the workload side of things. Like we also do this for your cloud trail. So a little more relevant to what we're talking about today. Like we also do this for like the AWS side of things. We'll help you make sense of your cloud trail logs. And in this particular one, we can see something has happened in this hour. We have this account that's interacting with our account. And it came in from India. And it made an API call. And there was a user created. And this is all new. You can see these red lines here. So this has never happened before. So like this is an anomaly. Like we're going to raise this up as an alert to you. Like generally, you're not sitting here looking at these screens, like an alert comes to you. And now we're starting to get over to where Dan's going to be able to help us out. Like, absolutely. Like these get raised as events that we can then send off to other things. James, you look like you have a question.
Thank you. Well, yeah, you're a mind reader. I was just going to say, like, it reminds me of, say you're walking down the street or say you're leaving your apartment or whatever. And then, your neighbor, you never talk to your neighbor, but all of a sudden you walk by your neighbor and, they seem like a nice person, you don't know, but then they're like, you know what? Like, hey neighbor, how you doing? Here's $50, like that sounds great, but it's so different and so weird. And it's never happened before that immediately, even though $50 is great, you're skeptical. It's like, what is this? Is this stolen? Is it laced with something I don't want to take? Like, it just automatically kind of kicks off that red flag of that weird behavior, even though it's something that you may have seen. Just the way it's acting a little bit different makes you kind of, are you sure about that?
I mean, and that's exactly it. People get into patterns. Like even to your example, like I leave my neighborhood in the same road every day, and I tend to come back on the same path and go to the same gas station. So like one day I leave differently, and I go to a gas station in the town next to me. Like that's abnormal behavior. Also, I feel you'd fit in real good at Lacework with your analogies, James. Like
Nice.
we do like that in the security community. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like, that one that said like known bad, that's something different, right? Those are things that we already know about, but like that only gets us so far. Like it's the anomalous behavior that like I'm really interested in. And when I say I'm really, like me personally, like I'd like threat hunting and digging in and like finding things that are like odd and like figure out why. And everything that's on any of these Lacework screens is all sitting in like a private Snowflake instance for our customer. So like if you are a data geek, which I am, like you can go directly to that and you can do whatever you want with that data. And I can query like across things, that EC2 instance is configured badly and has been involved in this event, like bring me the CVEs for that. And we can pull across like 3 pillars like that and get the data back. I find it very exciting. And I'm describing that because that's exactly where a product like Tines would tie in. I spent a long time in the SOAR industry. Our biggest problem was like normalized data sources. We didn't have them. So you get something like a Lacework where we give you access to data across all these pillars of your of your environment, and we normalize that data. You have a Tines in the middle that can like talk to APIs, and then you have AWS with your standardized APIs, and it's a perfect match. We can get reusable playbooks. We can respond to things. And Dan, I'm sorry, I'm starting to step onto your sore toes here. That's my first sore joke of the night, but yeah, I do get excited by this. Like I think we're solving different parts of the same problem, and it's really interesting to me. With that said, I want to set us up just a little bit for what Dan's going to dig into, because we didn't choose the runtime stuff. Generally, like a response to some sort of runtime thing is a little bit more complicated, and we wanted to put together something like simple that we could show on here, and you guys could get the idea. But in the back of your head, realize like from the Tines side, we can do whatever we want. Like it talks to APIs. It's great in that regards. So I want to talk just a tiny bit on the compliance side of things. So this preventative, this side of it here. And so Lacework by default is scanning all of your infrastructure once a day and putting all of that configuration information up against a bunch of different compliance reports, a bunch of different ones. And so you get this out of the box. And
Oh,
We
that's
don't
so
care
cool.
about other clouds. So let's drop them and let's just focus in on our AWS reports.
Yeah, that's super.
So if you care about SOC 2, but like a lot of times people don't even care about compliance, and that's fine. Like put yourself up against like CIS benchmarks, the Center for Internet Security, right? Like that's just low hanging fruit, and it's low hanging fruit for most people that I see. It's not necessarily exciting, but like this is like foundational security things, and so go
don't
ahead.
Get excited about all this, like you
Um,
don't go home and tell your kids about this. Today we did this.
I don't, but probably for the same reason I'm not like into accounting. Like my brain doesn't work quite like that. I like to jump in and solve problems. So what excites me about this is automating it. Like that's
Ooh,
exciting to me.
yeah.
Like then it becomes exciting again because like I don't want to be doing all these tedious like known steps. Like that's a perfect thing for a SOAR tool. So today, like before I pass off to Dan and let him talk about Tines a little bit, like what we're going to be looking at is an alert that got raised from the compliance side of things. But realize that like in Lacework, it could have come from these other bits as well. But it makes a really nice, like easy response. So we're talking compliance, we're talking configuration. So somebody misconfigures something in the cloud. And we have policy that says like, hey, we've got to address that immediately. So I think that's a good pivot point for Dan. Almost, Dan. I got one last piece, and that's I said these events they're coming out of Lacework. We got to send them over there some way. Like most people aren't directly in the interface. They're getting it with their tools they already have. So in this case, we have set up a webhook, and we've pointed that at Tines. And I haven't done this a lot. Like I was kind of impressed at how simple this was, Dan. Like that was by far the simplest part of the whole thing. We set it up. Data was flowing over to Tines. And I think that's a perfect pivot point for other Dan to talk a bit.
Thanks, Dan. Man, I hear you talk. I kind of remember back like a few years ago when you were when you and Rob Grisham was grilling me on during my SOAR accreditation interview, and I was just hearing about it. I'm like, oh man.
But
like,
look, we're on the same platform here now. Like, it's not there, man. Yeah.
So for all of you know, Dan Daggett was one of my mentors back when he was doing SOAR, and I just started SOAR, learning about different types of SOAR platforms and becoming a consultant eventually in Splunk SOAR then. But when from my standpoint, when I was looking at Tines the first time, I ran into, so they brought us in and they brought the CEO of Tines then, which is Owens. When he came on camera, he had the characteristics of a security engineer, like messy hair, t-shirt,
Nice.
and I was like, man, this guy's what I'm talking about. And when he started going to like modularization playbooks for security operations and like we're talking shop and stuff, I realized this dude knows what he's doing, and he built this platform with an idea in mind that makes our lives as SOAR engineers better. And I loved it ever since, and then eventually joined, and here I am today with Dan Daggett. So,
hey Dan,
as Dan said, yes.
Sorry. What is SOAR for everyone?
Now you're in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is SOAR?
And say Dan, and like we both respond. But I think Dan Lee, it's probably appropriate you respond. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, or whoever.
Yeah. So SOAR stands for Security Orchestration Automation Response. So essentially, it just automates a lot of your security workflows from a security standpoint. If you put SOAR, but with Tines, you could really say it or, because it automates just security. It automates IT ops. It also makes HR onboard and offboard processes, vendor onboard. Like as long as there's an exposed API or a way to communicate with the third party tool or system at hand, we could literally integrate with it and get things up and running, whether it is to do something to it or receive something from it. So, yeah, that's SOAR in a nutshell for you. And Tines, I consider it to be like a low code, no code SOAR platform. It's great, easy to use, and you get your ROI immediately. Does that answer your question, James?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sure Chat's kind of shy today, but I'm sure they probably were asking the same thing.
Yeah. So let me bring up my presentation. Get ready to kick some butt.
I always like this about other Dan. He gets so genuinely excited for the technology. I can relate. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, So I've been doing SOAR for about 5-6 years now. All the way with when Dan Daggett first introduced me to SOAR when it was like a Phantom, and then learn XOR, and then eventually Tines. But I could see the evolution stages of between Splunk SOAR, XOR, and Tines. That I think Tines caters a lot more to helping users be able to use the platform without actually having to hire expensive coders or like be able to know Python yourself. You could build workflows without having to be to know Python, know any really scripting language. It'll help, but in general, anybody could pick this up and be able to build something for themselves. Like at home, I have a playbook that runs that checks like the average pricing of kilowatts and turns on the charger station when it dips below that average pricing. And I automate the whole thing. So, but enough of that. Let's get into a little bit about Tines. So, Tines originally was built by Owens and TK. They're well known in the security industry, working at DocuSign, and like when they first started, like looking at these different SOAR platforms, they're like, okay, none of these SOAR platforms fit my needs, and they eventually built their own to fit their needs, and ever since then, like it took off, and here I am today, part of their company, and I love it. So when you first get into the SOAR platform, and this is free, if you need to figure out how can I sign for a free tenant, definitely do it. You get to build up to 3 stores for free for yourself to do whatever you want. We don't restrict on actions, users, or anything like that, just the store account. But when you first log in, it's a simple, nice, slick view. And one of the first things I'd like to highlight to you is the ability to create tenants or teams within the SOAR platform in order to separate all your data, your stories, and your credentials, and also like your variables. Were you still going to say something, James?
Yeah. Do you mind go ahead and zooming in a little bit for us?
Yeah. Is that good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Sorry about that. So if you're a multi-conglomerate organization or MSSP, you could easily create tenants right off the fly, meaning you could create a workspace for your own organization to work it. So I could do Lacework, right? And so as soon as you create it, now you can add the members in to start working within this workspace. And with other platforms, SOAR platforms, I found it difficult and complex to set up because you had to have additional resources or additional complex options that you might have to test to make sure it works in your environment. But with Tines, you could literally do this in a single instance by just separating people based upon organization, what they could see, what they can't see, and what they could process, what they can't process. I think this is phenomenal with just one click button. I love it, and it's really, really easy to use.
I have a question.
Sure.
Dan.
Yes.
So can we add members only within our organization, or how does this work? Who can be added as members?
So first you have to be an admin to kind of start adding members to the organization, but you could add people from inside and outside if you wanted to. But there are options to be able to restrict it. But yes, you can add pretty much anybody you want by just a click of add members, and then I could add like Dan to get to.
Sir, I need you to check the chat. I'm not a Baguette. It's actually Daggett. We've known each other long enough. Like we should probably have this conversation now. Yeah, it is Daggett.
Daggett. Yeah, but Yeah, so that's how you could do it easily. You can add anyone as a member as of right now. What I have set right now. So I could just add Dan to it. Dan, what's your email address?
It is Dan.Daggett. You wanted me to say my name again, didn't you? I appreciate that. GETT at lacework.net. So I guess if I say something interesting today, folks, like, there you go. Yeah.
Follow him on Twitter.
There you go. And I just add him right there, and all he has to do is sends a link to his email, and he just joins in, pretty much.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So you can add other people as you see fit, but obviously your policies, your company policies, and your admins are the ones that kind of determine who goes where, and restrictions.
Yeah.
So what I want to go over next. So that serves as a
Dan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to ask a question. Like, this source stuff is so interesting. This is all. We just start out from the browser. Like, do I need to go set up infrastructure to do this? Or like you mentioned how easy it is to set up the teams. And I know that's been a hard point to a lot of the SOAR products. Like, but you just started here. Like, did you have to set up infrastructure for this?
No. So you have two ways of getting Tines up and running. One is through SaaS. We do host a SaaS environment. So all you have to do is go to tines.com. And actually, I can do that right now. Log in or sign up, and you can literally just create a new tenant and sign up your email. I'll sign up mine. And Tines work with his internal SAML to actually get all this up and running, authentication method.
If you're going to type in any passwords and you need me to hide your screen, just let me know.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not typing any passwords today. No passwords. Yeah, and pretty much they could get started right away. And this goes into my next phase. Pretty much, this is the story. This is where the visual playbook editor is hosted, and like this is the UI interface. So when you first log in, you have many stories that we have pre-built already in our story library from our engineers, our architects, our even our AEs. Because like in Tines, everyone knows how to use Tines, so everyone contributes to the story. Of course, we vet and everything, but just to make sure everything is good to go. But you can literally just click on what story you want and import it right on in. And then from there, you can fill in your credentials and all sorts of stuff to get things up and running. So that's just the clean version. So now the next one will go into pretty much how this all works and ingestion and cool features of it.
Hey, Dan, a quick question.
Yes.
Can all of these features for free, or is there a pricing?
With the community edition, all the features are there. You can't create additional teams or additional tenants, and you could create up to 3 stories, 3 playbooks that could become active. That's the only restrictions. Of course, other things like you can't use it in production for like business continuously. I don't know, the contract stuff that I don't get involved in, pretty much, essentially.
So help me visualize these two together, Dan. Like, you got an alert coming out of Lacework. Thing happens. I mentioned a webhook. Like, how does this story tie into that? Like, I'm having trouble visualizing that connection.
Okay, so definitely. So I'm about to go into it right now. So the first thing I want to do, so as Dan Daggett says, we can easily do a webhook integration with any security tool product there, IT ops tool product out there that has a webhook integration themselves. So one way of ingesting Tines to kick off a trigger is through a webhook integration. So if I drag it over here, as soon as you create the webhook action, you have a webhook URL that you can easily just send to the customer, to to your counterparts, to whoever it may be, to put that URL in their webhook integration in order for them to immediately start sending events into Tines. So like with myself and Dan yesterday, we literally set the webhook integration. I say, here you go, and we're good, off to go. So not only can we do webhook integration, we could do webhook integration. We could also process different types of avenue. And one of my favorite ones is to receive an email. So in the past, with many of these sort products, what I had always had trouble with was integrating with the email services to pull email artifacts from the email from a inbox, right? Like for example, they have an inbox for phishing use case. All the phishing emails going into what phish me or something like that. I would literally spend weeks on end with the old 365 admin or email admin in order to try to get that email artifact out. And it always came down permission and like, oh, we didn't set this up right, or like connections, or you know, I gotta go to lunch and I'll see you later in like 2 weeks kind of deal. So yeah, it's happened. It's really happened.
I believe it.
Yeah, and I had, and like the one use case I would read is phishing use case, because then they'll go on all these rabbit holes when like I can't even get the email in first to process through. So with Tines, one of the best, coolest features I have so far is that we can literally have the users send the email directly to the playbook to start processing it. And it can accept email, MSG type files, right? And I love it because you skip all the political stuff, all the technical integrations, and literally all you have to do is just set some kind of add-on to tell, hey, if the user sees a potential phishing email, you know, they could send directly to this email and it could literally process. And in the Tines story library, we actually have a phishing use case that is already ready to go, and you just have to fill in you have to tweak it to your environment, of course, but it's suffice enough that you could be like, okay, I could just start from here. And I love it. This is one of my favorite features.
So you're saying this 40-year-old protocol that was written insecurely is a tough one to work with? Email?
Yeah, email. Yeah, I mean, with today's like external email services, yes. But even with IMAP server, I still had a hard time. Just not really from a technical standpoint, more from a political standpoint.
It's a sore point. It's a sore point for me, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's for me too. It is. But not anymore. With Tines, definitely not.
Not anymore.
The last way to obviously get in is a lot of these security tools out there, IT ops tool, they have an API endpoint in which you could communicate and hit in order to pull data in. Not my most favorite way of doing it, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do, right? To get your data in to start processing. So this in general is the 3 ways that you could actually start getting your events, your data in to start processing your workflows. Now, next up, I would like to show you one of the coolest feature. And like, I almost fell off my seat once. I remember back in the day when when one of the sales engineers showed me the curl to command time, curl to command. So, and I might not be saying this right because I kind of get that jacked up all the time. But literally, a lot of the API documentations out there, you can, they come up with example curls, right? Curl commands to talk with that particular endpoint. One here, don't worry, this is going to be gone in a second. But one of you literally just got to copy the curl command and paste it, and you literally built the template integration 4 times. Like you don't have to like manually fill in the blanks, fill in everything. You just literally do a copy paste the curl command, and then, you know, like some of them might have an API key you might have to input and get it up and running, but you literally just did that within seconds. Like you could literally build templates within seconds, and I think it will run. I hope so. Yes. Oh,
demo
yeah. Yeah. And it ran like I just literally built an integration, and this particular integration is a Lacework integration just to get information on an event in Lacework, right? And I literally built it in on this demo, like, and voila, and you're getting data already, like all about this particular event. I'm not going to go dig down the JSON path, but as you can see, you can just see the power of not having to know Python and not having to know like how the app integration works with that particular platform. I literally just took a curl command, boom, and ran it, and it worked. Like, and you could do this for anything that has an API endpoint that gives you a curl example, except assuming that the curl example is correct, because there are some curl commands that are wrong, and you're like, why is this not working? And like, well, the curl command doesn't look right. But just like last night when I was working on another technology alliance tool, and I looked at their docs, I was like, man, this does not look right. And I was like, man, this is wrong. But overcoming that. All right, and I just want to show you the people here, just how cool it is. Like, I set up a tiny demo just so that you guys could see a workflow relatively easy from 1 to 2. Because after that, I have a little bit more of a complex workflow. Not complex, but it's just it involves a little bit more digging. But I won't have that kind of time to dig deep in the weeds. But here, I literally have a simple one, and I can actually do it again. So I have a webhook, and I'm going to use an example that they already provide to send data to that webhook. So here's a curl command that I have. Copy and paste that. Bam, created and it literally an API integration. Well, quote unquote. Run it, and I literally hit the webhook. So that's your trigger, your starting point, and it passed the data over to my event transforms. Now, I'll go through each of these. So as you know, these particular 3 right here, one is a way to get your data in, another way to get your data in, and HTTP requests, because every API communicates through HTTP request. This is a template, an empty template in which you could use to write your own integrations to talk to those tools. That's one action type that we always use for Tines. And another one is send an email. So this is a typical notification action template that everyone will use, because in the security operations center, if the incident happens, you have to notify someone, right? And I'll go through like my methodology a little bit later, but that's a common way of notifying people is through email. Another action template is the trigger point. So it's like a if else then statement kind of deal. So if this is equal to this, proceed. If it's not, then don't let it go through. So it can act as like a filter and a decision tree kind of at the same time.
You don't want to send out emails for every single action that goes through to your entire security team. Is that what you're trying to say? 24 hours a day?
Yeah, well, there's some
on their toes.
Yeah, there's some that have higher priority than others. I can tell you that much. I don't want to be woke up for something that's blocked already.
That seems like one we can all feel pretty strongly there, James. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh man, I remember I was woken up. This is back my early days when I first became a security engineer. So I just first shifted from analyst to security engineer. I got woken up by a threat IOC alert that was blocked and not like active at all, and that IOC was like 5 years old, and I was like, nice. I rolled like 10 miles in just for that, and this is because I was working in a skip too, so it's not like they could tell me like what's going on outside. And oh man, it was like 1 a.m. in the morning and it was raining, and I remember just driving on in. So I would like to limit this.
And on the other side of that, Dan, I've been the one who automated all those emails out to you, and like, can't take that back now. Like, it's done.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I just saw that in the chat, and you're exactly right. Like, I don't want to get talking too much about email, or I'm going to rant the whole call, and James is going to kick me off. But agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the big other ones is event transform action type. So here, there's different. This is to sum it up. It is a way for you to manipulate the data, the JSON, the data that's in the JSON, and several ways to do it: extract, implode, dedupe. So extract meaning extract certain things in the data, and explode meaning if you have a list, right, and a list could be as simple as 1, 2, 3, it will literally explode the list into individual events. So instead of having one event that's a list 1, 2, 3, now you have one event that's named one event that's named two, one event that's named three. And implode is like, hey, I want to put things together into a list. So then you could be like, all right, I want to implode all these individual events into one list. And you could do that. Dedupe, obviously, it's a self terminology, just deduping certain items or events or strings in the list.
Dan, if I could, like, I'm curious to relate this back to like where we're going with the two together, like, and for everybody else's benefit, like we sent over this compliance event. You kind of hinted at there that it's going to be around like open S3 buckets, and we could send over multiple buckets at once. So when you're talking about like a list, is that what we're talking about? You could break those out and deal with each one. Okay.
Exactly. So in a Lacework alert, we can have multiple buckets that are fired off. Like, hey, there's these three buckets are open to the public. So I could literally separate those to individual items for processing. Because sometimes you might have a reason, hey, I don't want to process item because it's actually allowed, right? Not that I would condone it, but as Dan said, manipulating data sets will help me determine on how to process data along down the workflow. So enough of that. Let me go over a few more cool features, and then we'll go right into the demo. So one of my other favorite ones. Yes.
Are there any other ways by which we can notify the customers of any actions apart from just email?
Yep. Yes, you could. There's many messaging applications out there that you can use, like Slack. So Slack has a bunch of integrations that you can use to notify your SOC team or your IT ops team of things going on. Teams, same thing. Mattermost, I believe, is still there. Nope. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, maybe not. And Discord. Yes, Discord. Like many different chat functions and applications, you could definitely use to. So email's not the only way, right? Every SOC's different. Everyone communicates differently. Yep. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Slack, so I use Slack. But one of the cool features that I like is the note. So and this goes back to my days as a store engineer, when Dan and Rob were grading my playbooks. One thing they always harped me on was note taking, making sure that anybody in this world could read through my playbook or my story to understand what's going on. And they failed me once, actually, before they passed me, because I wasn't taking notes properly. And as any good engineer, note taking so that any other engineers that proceed before you is very important. And Tines lets you really do this. So they have a feature, just queer like notes that you can attach videos, do different codes, put bullet points and stuff like that. And I like the video function because all they really need is a URL to that video, and I'll do the Tines URL, YouTube URL, copy and paste.
Hey, one of the Dans, we have a question in the chat for you.
Yes, sir.
Can you please highlight how and why we would use Tines with our AWS infra? Also, please provide some color on why use Tines versus step functions. No problem with the typo. We know. We got you. Why do you use tines versus step functions with lambda for orchestration and SNS for notifications?
So you could definitely use SNS for notifications for sure with like guard duty to get your alerts directly from guard duty into notification. It's another way if I don't like say I didn't have like specific tools to ingest alerts from a specific vendor. From in terms of step function Lambda, so for me, I don't know Lambda, right? And so like for those that don't know Lambda, like it'll take some time to learn and actually do that. So with Tines, I don't really have to know specific different like how Lambda works and everything like that. I actually, and this is me about to go towards my remediation playbook here. So here's pretty much one of our main remediation playbooks that Lacework and Tines have wrote in AWS. And it's more of taking alerts from Lacework into the webhook, and based upon what type of alert it is, it'll produce remediation steps with the AWS API. So here, what we're looking at is
Dan.
Yes.
Can you make it small for just a second and show that all in one screen? Because I think that also kind of answers the question, which would be because you can hit a bunch of disparate systems and you don't have to reinvent each integration. Like, you can't read all of those at this scale, but like each one of those kind of bottom lines coming off for different workflows for different types of events, and he's reaching out to Slack and Jira. I saw you guys commenting on that. That's perfect.
Yeah,
like I want my Jira in Slack. But like that part of the value, I think it would be right there. Like I don't have to write all those integrations or maintain them, or with a Lambda function, I could certainly do that. Like I have a development background, and for some things maybe it does make sense. But I would say for the community and all that existing content is why I personally would want to lean towards something like this.
Yeah. And so pretty much what this workflow does, and we'll actually run through it, is that it ingests Lacework, searches for that particular event because there's more information that we would need. Because when it sends it in, it doesn't produce everything, and we get the event, enrich it with Lacework, add that all to a Jira ticket, and pretty much give the analyst or the admin a choice of, hey, do we want to remediate this particular alert? And if they choose to, we'll reach into the AWS API functions and able to take care of all this across the board, whether it's enabling version and bucket to locking down the S3 bucket,
So I got to go copy and paste curl commands from AWS, or like is that sitting there existing for me?
Yes. So you could do both, but they're already existing in our template library. Pretty much, if you type in AWS, you have all these particular actions already built out for you that you could just literally drag and drop and fill in your variables, and you're good to go.
That is so cool.
I agreed.
Yeah.
Right. It was very much why we chose kind of this compliance issue. Like there's all of these very straightforward things you can do in AWS, so we can feed it this list of buckets and go respond here. And I agree. I really wanted you to show us that, Dan, because I was impressed. Yeah.
I will.
So that like we have a lot of like in AWS, we have a lot of different best practices and reviews. So this seems like it would satisfy a lot of some of those really common best practice security requirements without having to manually set up everything, like manually set up bucket notifications, have those triggers. This you set it up once with your flow here, and you get a notification and just click, and it just kind of, is that what I'm getting? That's kind of what I'm getting. Is that sort of how it's working?
Yeah. So like, it literally
That's
is
so
that
cool.
you just drag and drop and then just fill in the values you need, and it will go right on through and as long as it meets criteria along each of the trigger ways, you are good to go. So like as you we're like, you know, the common practice, rotate your IMA credentials, right? Turn on bucket alert version, bucket encryption. Make sure that the bucket, like for some reason, if you, I mean, like I find it pretty hard to now these days like have it open because you have so many warnings that goes before you turn that on. It's
but you still see it all the time though, and it's not generally like the main team. It's usually somebody else. I'm going to do this as a one-off, and then they forget about it.
They forget about it.
You know, right? I need to share some files with somebody temporarily, and then they forget about it, and then people start putting other things in there.
Yeah, and I won't forget about today. Well, I'm going to delete those buckets immediately from my test environment.
It's just on the recording. You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let me go up here. Oh, I embedded a video in here. If anybody wants this like story, let me know. Like I can send it. So in this video, you know, it's just our CEO just talking about time. You literally watch the video as you're doing this inside the workflow. Like it's pretty cool. You know, if you're going to do a walkthrough demo, you literally could just drag drop this thing and just like keep on going through it and like it wants to work through or something like that.
I think you might need to pause that video. It's on my side at least. It's getting a little garbly.
Your bandwidth is. Oh, well, that you're in a hotel room, aren't you, or something?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, your internet is probably not the best at the moment.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Can you guys hear me now well, though?
Not really.
Give me 1 second.
Is the video running too? You might. I don't know how much that'll help.
It is still on our share showing it's running.
Yeah.
But what I did hear him say before it got choppy is if anybody wants this, and like Dan, I think my coworkers would like this, like if nobody else. Yeah. Because all those compliance ones I saw you had lined up were like those all directly relate to things we can report on. Yeah.
Can everyone hear me now? See the screen?
You're still a robot at the moment.
Oh, that's what you meant there. Yes, very robot-like. Right.
Yeah.
The truth comes out.
No. Hold on 1 second.
So whenever he gets back, my question is, can you, in this kind of dashboard, say my entire security department decided to quit one day, and I know nothing about security, and all of a sudden an alert pops up. So even though my team quit, they still left a good system in place. Could those videos say, hey, like if you run into XYZ, here's how you do it? Like it's kind of like a backup for your directions and such.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
I can now.
Yeah, it's
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Oh man, this is working off the Wi-Fi. That's one thing I do not dream of. Let me wait for this to get loaded. Man. Okay, there. Making sure I didn't delete anything off the way. All right. So right now, I'm going to go through, and I'm clear right now. Is everybody good to go?
You're still a robot.
If you like, Dan, I can share my screen for a moment and just touch on the actual event he's about to show, going through that, and give him a chance to
yeah. Let me
figure out what's going on there.
Let me go on there.
Oh, well, you look good now, I think.
He does, huh?
Okay, I'm good.
Never
Good.
failed. You just had to suggest,
Right?
switching for a second, then all of a sudden.
Give up your screen, man. And then he's back.
Oh man, I gotta talk to. I'm never gonna post that YouTube video again. I think
I have the link for it. Is this the link? I'll put it on the.
Oh no! I gotta tell Owens this a little bit later.
So we can hear you pretty good now, Dan, and your screen's coming through good. Like you were about to take us kind of like from the webhook down.
Yeah.
Before you did that, I thought it might be helpful if you just go over one tab and show the Lacework event. Like, so what are we talking about feeding through this? Like, what are we responding to?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm on. I think Tines CEO almost took my my tenant down.
Just give us an hour here. We got this.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
So, pretty much what I have here is a Lacework event that came in. We're using a relatively brand new event from yesterday. Me and Dan were doing a little bit of testing yesterday and eating and talking about life and 6 years of getting here. Pretty much this is an event that pretty much shows that, hey, the S3 buckets ACLs grant everybody read permissions, right? And
so, would you open up that more detail there? Like,
yep,
I think that'll give us
exactly.
Yeah.
Boom. So it literally tells me who it is. I mean, what bucket it is, and under what account ID it is. And can everybody see closely? Let me zoom in. Boom. So I currently have an S3 bucket called Ghost Rider Man that is all sorts of jack.
Ghost Rider.
Yeah, something cool. And it's not my handle. I was on I was 1 a.m. in the morning. I was typing away.
It's not your handle yet.
It will be. It might be.
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like in the S3 Management Council. So Ghost Rider Man obviously is public to the open, but I also have fan is public to the open for testing purposes. No data in there, I promise you. I will pretty much get rid of it as soon as I finish.
But jokes aside, like there's plenty of valid patterns for wanting it to be public, right? Like we can we can put a website in there and point like Route 53 at it. Like there's valid patterns for that. Like
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If it's meant to be to the public, make it public. But if it's not meant to be, don't make it public. That's what I can say. And
so
you gotta go
from the Lacework event. Then we reported. We created this. It reported this, and then it sent a little JSON blob over to that webhook on Tines saying, "Hey, here's some details about this."
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so now we're going to Lacework sends an event in, and for us, we're going to use a static how do you say it? A static data set and to go through this demo right here. So right now, all I did was I set one of the IDs on 2113. So this is pretty much the alert that is tagged that we're going to use to process through the Lacework remediation AWS story. So when I click on that, it immediately starts to go through. And how you can tell if it's going through, that you in the corner right here, and I can zoom on in right here for everyone, is that you'll see this number starts incrementing, and it's actually telling you that, hey, it's going through. And if it doesn't go through, it'll show a red dot right here saying that it doesn't go through. And so one of the features, just from a story standpoint, that I really, really love is that I'm able to see events, how they happen as I'm going down the action block. With XSOAR or Splunk SOAR, I would always have to watch that debug panel and slowly see and find what's happening across down the line. As Dan could attest to, we literally test this one event 2,000 times because we're like trying to figure out where is it in the debug that this action happened. But with Tines, I literally can just go through and be like, okay, I'm hitting this action type, this action block right here, and this is everything that happened, and this is how the data came in, or what we did to that particular security tool or IT ops tool. So as you can see here, successfully, this particular action block pulled in the whole entire Lacework alert. And one of the features I really love is also not only can we debug in the middle of troubleshoot, like in the middle, but we could also remit that event in a point in time in that workflow. So like here, I could be like, okay, I just want to start from here versus from all the way from the beginning, remit it, and I literally can then run again to see if I have to debug the workflow or not. I love this feature. Saves time on playbook development for sure. So let me go out here now and zoom out on my Mac.
Those playbooks are so
put
handy.
in,
What's up?
can we put in rules here? Let's say one of our bucket actually wants to be public and we don't want to alert our customers the second time.
I will definitely. Oh, from a Lacework standpoint, Dan, if you, I don't know. If
Oh, sure. No, yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. Because it could be done either way, Kruthi, for sure. On the Lacework side, and that's what I see when customers come into compliance, is two things. They want to start fixing things, or they want to start making exceptions. So we can absolutely make an exception list and just stop reporting on that. You can even go as far as like making an exception list and tell it, okay, this is the exceptions for the next 6 months or 3 months, and then have that expire and start reporting again there. So you can certainly do it from our side. Dan is also taking care of it on the Tines side as well, because we're both working on each product. But yeah, appreciate that, Dan. And I think it might be helpful, at least for me, like this is our first time seeing this playbook. If you maybe kind of talk us through like, like what's our workflow here? Like I saw that where you're debugging that get Lacework event, but why do you have to get the Lacework event if it already came in? And then like what are these triggers and
Yep, absolutely. So to answer your question, Kruthi, is that we do have, there is a point in which you could set like, hey, a public bucket allowed list. So like if it is allowed, it won't like actually block. It won't actually apply the policies to that S3 bucket, without like going through a trigger first. So that's another way to filter it out. But as Dan said, I'd rather do it from the source versus in the sort, right? So you always want to work to the source first and take care of that problem at the source versus somewhere along the line of the workflow.
That is golden advice, man. Like,
yes.
In general, yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm like wondering tonight, where's the source of my dinner? So I'm thinking about that right now as I'm talking on this conversation.
So sore got you hungry.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But as Dan said, let me give a high overview of what's happening right now so far. So we literally mimic a webhook alert coming through from Lacework, and it's pulling event details from Lacework. So like things that I need to keep on processing the playbook. It's checking to see, hey, is this a compliancy alert, right? If it is, continue. If not, end it, right? And then it actually creates an issue in Jira. So it doesn't have to be Jira. It could be ServiceNow. It could be whatever ticket system, ITSM system out there. Like I don't care. Like I just use Jira because that's what I have access to, and that's what I have.
Every time on the show when someone says something like that, I get my little PTSD. Like, oh, Jira,
Oh, I know what you mean, and I've worked with Jira integrations and other sort of platforms, so I definitely know.
It's Jira or ServiceNow, right? Like they all,
no more tasks, no more tasks.
No tasks, yeah. And it literally would then say, hey, if the alert exists, and if that particular alert Lacework, hey, can it actually be remediated within this workflow? It will actually add a remediation prompt to the Jira ticket to get the users to answer yes or no. Right here is a little post message Slack channel. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember where the Slack channel is. I have to kind of hunt it down. I have so many Slack channels on this planet. I can't remember.
So the people in that Slack channel love you right now.
Yeah,
just been spamming them. Yeah,
I probably find hundreds of Slack channel alerts into this. But so far, I'm stopping right here. Demo.
So, and I think it's worth calling out. Like Dan and I sat here and we just talked this through. Like, what would we do if this came in? Like, well, we've got to start a ticket first to document what we're doing, and then we've got to, the Slack thing. We got to let somebody else know here so they're aware that the ticket exists, or, and then how would we make that decision process? And then we like turned it into that story. Like after just kind of talking it through, so a lot of times I see SOC start with like their standard operating procedures, and then how do I apply that into a SOAR product to like deal with the alerts coming from a Lacework or whatever?
Yep. So like,
and it's Jira. I like that you put it on the screen for James. Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, just for you, man. Just for you. But like, as Dan says, like 5 things that analysts always do. They got to ingest data somewhere to actually look at it, right? They have to investigate it. They have to notify, document, and respond to it. So a security operations center, its main existence is
Oh no.
phrases from
Dan, your hotel internet is dying on me again.
It's the punishment for bringing up Jira on screen. He pulled this up yesterday, and the Jira loaded, and it said, "You have too many issues to display." I was like, "Oh, it was the same deal." It's like somebody let that run for too long. Like, do I have to respond to all of those?
Yes. Every single one of them.
I got it in my past life as a developer. What about you, James? Was it an ops role or somewhere else that you had to deal with Jira?
Whew. Am I here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a developer role. It was a little bit of both, but yeah, it was just one of those things. It's just creep and creep and creep, and then alerts and alerts and alerts, and you know how it goes.
Am I back?
I do. That's certainly part of like Lacework's pitch for the value offering is let us lower those alerts and make some sense of it before you send it off to a Tines and then a Jira. Yeah. Yep. So I absolutely get it. I feel that strongly. We got you, Dan. We were just finishing our Jira conversation, but yes, we've got you, sir.
Oh, thank God. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like this hotel Wi-Fi. The Hyatt's not known for it. It's Wi-Fi. And someone's probably hogging it all up right now, downloading some crypto mining.
Somebody
like
named Dan.
Yeah, could be me. I don't know. Maybe. But what was I saying? Oh, what was the last thing that
you took us through like our workflows. This is compliance. Is this fixable? Like we opened in Jira and now you're going to Jira, I think, to show us something.
Yep. So, I know Dan and Rob back in the day, they taught me like a different like playbook development methodology called the I2A2. Definitely share it. Not going to really go in detail, but essentially an analyst does 5 main tasks. They ingest something, they investigate something, they document something, they notify someone, and they respond to something. Because a security operations center, its main goal is to lessen the impact of the incident, right? Whether it's reputation, operational time, uptime, or money, right? And the faster we remediate something, the less the impact it is to an organization. So that's why SOARs come into play today, is to lessen that impact. All those mundane tasks that we have to do could be automated. And so going pinpoint back to the Jira stuff, we create a ticket in Lacework, pretty much the alert title and everything, and showing what's going on. Like, as you can see here, all the information is input to the Jira ticketing with a little flamingo of the Jira action type. James, hey man, Tines makes working with Jira a lot better.
Yeah, at least it's clear here. Yeah.
Yeah, and then down here it adds in the comment section the ability to remediate this issue.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I could literally just click here, remediate, and as you can see, it goes through the triggers here. So based upon the alert type it is, they'll process that particular event through the workflow. So in this case, we want to add an AWS public access block policy into the S3 bucket. So what we do is, once it comes here, it's like, okay, it matches the alert and it makes sense that, hey, we could process this particular response with this alert. Goes through, it explodes out like the violation. So this is when it explodes out each and the different violations. So it could be three different S3s or 4 different S3s that have that read policy violations. After that, it will check to see, hey, is this bucket on the allow list? If it is, don't let it go through. If it doesn't, let it go through, right? And here, it literally will now reach in the API and tell it to apply the block policy and add the issue comment in Jira. So if we go back into Jira, oh shoot, did I lose Jira? Oh, no. Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. There's Jira. If you go back down, it literally says here, public policy apply to Ghostwriter 9899, contact owner, and all that stuff. So I literally created a comment, and it actually did response action. And if I refresh this, as you can see, this Ghostwriter man is no longer has public access. It has been given a different policy, and bam. So how this workflow could work is, it could easily lessen the response time for an analyst. Like if the analyst just sees like, hey, there's an alert, and I'm like, okay, based upon the investigation, hey, this is not really something that should be happening. They just literally click a button, and everything gets the documentation in the Jira tickets gets automated. The response gets automated, and they literally solve an issue in less than 30 seconds, which instead of like a few minutes, right, or a few hours, based upon the organization, how big it is. But the power to automate something to lessen the impact is huge. And and at the end of the day, SOARs do help save the client, from a security standpoint, the impact, right? They'll be able to respond quicker and lessen the impact to an incident. And at the same time, you can also enable the analysts to process through more events versus if they were to do everything manually in terms of investigation, documenting things up, sending an email out, responding. You can literally say, hey, an analyst can now process 1,500 events in one day versus like 30 because they had to do all these mundane tasks. So here is pretty much the Lacework remediation playbook. I believe it is available on the Story Library for use immediately, and you could definitely get a Lacework account for 30 days, for a 30-day trial and set everything up. And you could also get a Tines tenant up and running, and that doesn't have a time limit as of today. And you can build 3 stories up, and also you could just build an AWS account quickly. I'm not sure about how it charges, like creating an S3 bucket and all that stuff, but and do this yourself and have a ball and try it out, right? And actually get to learn the products that we have on today's call. So, pending any questions, that's pretty much all I have for Tines.
Cool. First question is from the chat. It's I think it's more of a side note. They're curious if you're using EKS as Kubernetes backend for Tines.
I don't know the answer to the question. I am not an engineer that works on the back end in the architecture of Tines in AWS. I know, yeah, so I can't. If you want more information, definitely shoot me a question, and I could definitely get that answer for you. I do know some components of how Tines is set up, but like the questions are probably best answered by engineer.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there any way to revert the changes that has been made by the automation, or do we have to manually go and revert the changes?
Yeah, you can say like, here, I could zoom in on this one specifically. Say you want to say, hey, I want to unblock it, right? After a certain time. It's like dealing with like sticky ports for like Cisco ISC. What you can do is, if you want, you could like say, hey, I want to set a delay of, I don't know, 20 million days or whatever it is. And then after that, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there. You could literally, and I'm not sure we have a template to unblock, but let me just grab an AWS, just a random HTTP request. Let's say I just grab this, and we'll call this the unblock access policy. You could literally just So if for some reason like you wanted to unblock at a certain period of time, or somebody made a mistake or something, you could either A, set delay to unblock, or B, set an after actions prompt in like a Slack bot or a Teams bot or another Jira ticket that prompts the analyst to say, hey, I made a mistake, one unblock kind of deal. So yes, you could use your imagination, build whatever you want, as long as there's an exposed API for you to communicate with that particular product. And it's different functions that are available out there in Tines for you to manipulate the data.
Okay. And I have another question. Is there a limitation on the number of workflows that we can create? Any kind of limitations that's there from either Lacework or Tines end?
Yes. So community editions have up to 3 stories. And when I mean by public, it's like the same thing as saying for XSOAR and SplunkSOAR is active. So as soon as you turn on, and this particular story is already published, so it's active, meaning that now it is automated, meaning any alert that comes in, it could run through the workflow immediately, automatically. Now, if this was off, if it was not unpublished, if the alert hits, it won't actually work through the workflow automatically, right? So that's the difference. But yes, every user, every engineer on this call can easily just go to tines.com, sign up, and say, and get your instance up and running. Same with Lacework. You could do lacework.com and get things up and running. I've gotten one up and running, Dan Daggett and myself. So yeah, definitely play around with it. Learn a lot of new things. And if you want to hit me up, I'm at dle@tines.io or .com, either one. And you could definitely get that information from James and Kruthi went after this call, and I'll be happy to talk to you and we could talk shop. I'm by no means a software engineer, so I could definitely talk to the architecture at times, but I can't talk to like the intermediates, like how each component like is built and all that stuff. That's when I'll probably bring a software engineer.
So we've got some mutual customers, Dan, right? Like, but I think a good example of like what you're just showing, that I was just on a call the other day and I had somebody like explain to me how they were doing this compliance bits, and they were literally like downloading the compliance reports, copying and pasting into Jira, assigning it to another team, and then waiting for that team. And I think a lot of the time that you end up saving too is really like those waiting between the pass offs between teams, because there's always multiple teams involved. And as we were going through this, like just right after that call, it's like I really should point them at this. Like this could save them a lot of time. We have the ability to open the Jira ticket for them, but like to actually respond to it, because a lot of these compliance things, like perhaps there's just policy, right? Like I don't allow this in my environment, and if I did, you'd be on this allow list like you were showing us. So
Yep.
Yeah. I do think it's exciting when we got the cloud provider as well, because like I was saying, you get those standardized, like we can talk back and forth to each other like easily and make these playbooks reusable, which was always a struggle like in the past for like especially like some of the first sort companies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, you're bringing me back memories, Dan. Of like all the
We'll stay here in the present, man. This is cool. Like a lot of these things I see you get so excited for, like I understand why, because like it's so much easier here. Like even just that little link in Jira to like remediate it, send it back, like that. Like you did it real fast, but like that's kind of a cool thing, Like I've set up those workflows before with like a Jira button that can reach back and do things, and it was never like quite that simple. Well,
yeah. I'm just glad for one thing. Like I haven't written a Python function in a little bit. I'm happy, and now I'm happy not to have to debug and go blind from looking at that debug screen like, oh no, red. No. And this is like app integrations. Like one particular SOAR product, I would have to literally like read through the documentation, like, oh man, I gotta bring these libraries, write these particular how to structure these functions and like how to bring us data. With Tines, I literally just read the app docs quickly and like, okay, this is the endpoint I gotta hit to do something. all right, do I have a connection? Yes. Do I have the right authentication mechanism? Yes. And that's it. Like to debug this, it's sweet because like I literally could debug midway, be like, oh, like here's where it got screwed up, and because maybe my key, my authentication method is like not working. Right.
So,
And
Kruthi, earlier when you were asking me like what I like to do when I'm geeking out, like this is it. I actually enjoy the stuff he's talking about, like troubleshooting and like, okay, where did this go wrong? Like, it's a big puzzle for me to like. But Dan, I suspect not everybody loves debugging as much as we do. Like,
I remember debugging with you one night. I think it was it was a Tenable or SharePoint app that we had to build. I was like, oh my god. I kept on failing. I was getting tired. I was like, it was like 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, oh my, I'm about to throw this computer somewhere. But
and I think to Dan's point, like what I've really seen is like some of these like second generation SOAR vendors. I really like how they've learned from like, okay, we saw that, like here's where people ended up actually doing it this way, and like a lot of things you're pointing out, like I think people that haven't done SOAR before don't have that reference model to like be like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like, but you guys really have. Like I see lots of little things like that where you've absolutely learned and like made things a little bit smoother. And I'm excited to like for more collaboration really between us. Like I think that we put together this kind of simple one with like 6 compliance routes with AWS, but like we could certainly expand upon that. And, like I think both of our customers could certainly benefit.
Yeah. And for me, like I'm like, one of the things I realized I kind of forgot about it is just this. Oh man, Dan, remember like when we have to walk down that JSON path and like I figured out that particular key that will give us that value manually, like walking down.
I can see where your PTSD is.
Yeah. That's one of my worst ones. Like, oh man, here, like I don't have to worry about that. I can just be like, you know what? This is it right here. This is the key.
Well,
and I just
so to like solidify this, like when you had pulled up that like block bucket command, you could then point it like into this JSON coming in and say, use this field as the bucket block.
Oh my God. Like,
and things like that weren't easy in the beginning.
No, they weren't. And and sometimes I would make a lot of mistakes. And now I'll do something like here, like, I don't like to. I'll find something relatively straightforward. Let me go somewhere in this workflow. Right here. All right. So like here, in the past with the other SOAR platforms, I would literally have to walk down the JSON path to get me the right key, so I get the right value. Number one, it didn't preview the value for me. I had to kind of figure it out. But in Tines, this debug, this is when I fell off my seat when I saw this. Like one of the best things. Like I no longer have to squint down that JSON path. I could literally fill this in, and you know what the other feature is? Like I could automate it. It actually autofills the values for you as you go down, so you can select. I was like, oh man, I'm now walking down the JSON path, and and here's the value. Like I don't have to really kind of like think about it, right? Like that's just so amazing.
This is like its own commercial in itself, Dan. Like, see how happy your SOAR engineers could be.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God.
our product makes people happy to work with. Like,
Yeah. I remember like it probably was not great. I had a power utility company, and I won't lie to you, like I was quarantining some devices, and like I was using an EDR solution. And I was tired because it was in the middle of the night. It was like 10 p.m. at night. And like, we're like, and the email part was what frustrated me the most, was getting the old 365 admin to work with me. Cause like, he was like, he or she, was like, oh yeah, it's working. I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, dude, like you didn't grant me admin consent to pull these emails. He's like, oh, my bad. And it's just like 7 hours later. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm tired. I'm starting to pull these email artifacts in, and and I'm looking through CMDB, based from one workflow to another. Okay, and these are the users that we have to quarantine and CrowdStrike, or boxes we have to quarantine and CrowdStrike. And I accidentally did something. I hit the wrong key value in the JSON path because I had to do it manually, and I did a lot more than I thought I would. And that was not a good day. I can tell you that. I fixed it.
Sounds like you're being diplomatic. That's probably good. Yeah.
I fixed it. Yeah, I fixed it. Yeah. But you know, it was one of those times that I had. But you know, and partially it was my fault. But like with Tines, it just makes it easy for just to autofill and get through that. I'm like, oh, I don't have to make these mistakes, right? And it decreases the chance of user error and engineering error on my part. And that makes it.
I mean, for my part, if you come do a Lacework trial and, you know, I'm starting to show you all your data, like I won't be able to help it. I'm going to be jumping to like, and here's how you can automate like the response to this. Like I spent too long doing that, you know, like it does make sense for a lot of situations, I think. You know, and you can free up time to be doing threat hunting or like things that are, I think, more interesting to a lot of security geeks.
Yeah, it is. But
like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I have a question for either of the Dans. I mean, if you're, I don't know, is your story still going? I don't want to interrupt you. You're in the middle of your geeking out. I don't want to step on your toes. No, my question was regarding, like I said, for either of you, Dan Daggett showed how CloudTrail logs are pulled into Lacework. Is there any sort of integrations like with other of the AWS security features, like for example, Security Hub, Guard Duty, Inspector, on either side of those things? Like, does it pull it in and kind of give you a centralized place for all of that? Or
and so I'll answer from the Lacework side first. Currently, no. We're taking in from AWS CloudTrail as well as like, you know, pulling configurations from APIs. Now we've certainly talked a lot about that because it starts to make sense, right? Like, and not just like Guard Duty and things like that. Like, you know, like my Active Directory data would be interesting. My Office 365 data would be interesting. So I certainly heard a lot of talk around that, and it looked like Dan had an answer on his side. So I'll let other Dan.
Yeah. So like for us, if we were to get we would depend on the SIM reliability platform to do all the correlation and like all the central event management, right? Tines is more of a pure workflow automation. So we would depend on Guard Duty or a SIM platform or Security Hub to actually take care of that for us on our side, while we handle the alerts that come in, whether it's through SNS alerting into Tines to process that Guard Duty alert or do something with it.
That's a really good point, having your central correlation bit. Like, because we have customers that are using Guard Duty as well as Lacework, and generally they're sending them both over to their SIM, doing something with it there, and then moving it on to like a SOAR product.
Yeah.
Right. So you hit that in between point and then send off to SOAR.
Got it. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
And as far as so you mentioned that we could go to Tines.com and Lacework.com. Is there any sort of AWS marketplace offerings for this, or is there any other ways that they can check and anyone can get involved with this or use it as a solution?
Absolutely, from our side, we are happy to help. Have you guys help us sell it, and you can certainly purchase Lacework through the marketplace. Work with your AWS contact if you want. I go both ways. Sometimes I end up straight to a prospect or customer, and sometimes I'm working through an AWS rep.
Okay, cool.
If our customers want any help from specialists from either Tines or Lacework, do you have the resources to help our customers or to help your customers with any specialized workflows or any of those things?
You're talking about collaborations between the three products, really? Having...
Not exactly.
Go on.
Not exactly collaboration, just as a customer who is new to Tines, if I want some support to build Tines or to build a workflow from my end? Is there any specialist support or somebody that I can reach out to apart from the documentation that is there?
Other Dan.
I'm sorry.
Tines Dan. Can we get you on the phone if we want help building our workflows?
Yes. Oh, yeah, of course.
Or people like you.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, the internet just it was a little lag, but yes, absolutely. You can definitely reach out to anybody, and you could reach out to our community edition. We have a community Slack that you can reach out for help easily. And the general page, like our support engineers, our sales engineers, our customer success engineers, our AEs, even the CEO and the CEO definitely are active on there, and you could definitely reach out, just blast away. If you see a feature request you want with Tines or a playbook help or like something like that, like they are very responsive. And I think you could sign up through Tines.com to get to that Slack channel.
Oh, okay. So that Slack channel is not, I'm not gonna say public, but yeah, community. Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Community. Yeah. I could get the steps on it afterwards. I don't remember the workflow. I think like when I signed up for my email, it was good to go, kind of deal.
Okay. And then we have one more question in the chat. They're asking if there's any workshops or YouTube links for AWS integration use cases specifically. I know we linked what was it? Like some of the self-paced bootcamp stuff, but is there anything else that would showcase that?
In terms of in Tines, yes, we do. We don't have workshops or YouTube videos. Oh, yeah. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. So we don't particularly have dedicated videos to AWS integrations or AWS stories. However, the story library itself and also the public templates that we have has a lot integrations with AWS and the workflows with AWS.
Cool. And then Lacework, there actually is one for. I'm pulling up the link right now. Give me 1 second.
And I'm going to go ahead and answer Kruthi's question while you're doing that from the Lacework side of things. Because I found it very interesting. Like most of my background's from the security side of things, but I came onto the Lacework team and like half my team was from Chef and the DevOps side of things. And I felt we had this really good balance. So like we can pull different team members in to talk to the DevOps side of things versus the security side of things. And everybody on our team is like, that's what we're there for, is to, be there to help consult and like, yeah. So absolutely from our side as well. What I'm hoping to see and what I thought I was hearing was like more of this between like, Dan and I to be able to like, using the products together. I see a ton of potential there.
Yeah, definitely. Could you answer a little on possible collaboration with other solutions, or how does it work with Lacework and Tines? How do we reach out to you for any possible collaboration?
I mean, currently I've turned into like our SOAR fanatic here at Lacework because of my background. I've even brought on a few people from my past to like work with me. And so anytime we hear the word SOAR, like everybody kind of knows, like, let's go pull Dan into a conversation, or let's go grab Drew and bring him into this. Cause I get all excited and not just for Tines, like, I'm happy to set up if you're using a different platform. Tines I found was pretty nice for some of these niceties and get up and going really fast. But, as far as I'm concerned, like I just like automating things, and I'm happy to like, help where it is. There's a lot of similarities also between the products. So if somebody already has something, like I certainly work on that as well.
Yeah. Me and Dan talk a lot. Me and Dan Daggett talk a lot. Like we've known each other for a little bit.
Keep calling me Daggett, aren't you?
It's Daggett.
It's Daggett.
Daggett.
Like you said, it's been 6 years, my friend. Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely. Like, so what ended up happening is like they started dropping me on all the big accounts because I can't shut up about automating everything. They're like, that's great, but like some people are just trying to get up and going, and we do that well too. Like, but I see all that data sitting there. It's like we got 3 months to 6 months of your data just sitting there, and like joinable like queries. You can export that to your own like RDBMS if you want it, or like work directly in Snowflake. And like it's very exciting, the potential there. And we got some of the best data scientists around the world from like Google and Facebook, and like they're heading up our engineering efforts. Like our CEO built one of like the best engineering teams at Facebook, that like I worked directly with, and they were amazing people. So like the future really excites me, and even more so if you plug like a SOAR product in that. It makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So I mean, is there anyone does the chat have any other questions we can ask the Dans while we're here, while we have them captive and you don't have to actually email them? I think this is really awesome. That's one of my favorite things about this show is in our roles, me and Kruthi, we do a lot of technical validations. We always see things from like, send us an architecture diagram. Let's help you build something. The number one thing I love about this show is being able to see stuff in action and then almost every single time we get shown something, I go, oh, that's legit. That's actually really cool. Even though it's, I guess, nerdy, geeky, whatever you want to call it, it actually is legitimately cool.
Yeah, I agree with James here.
Yeah, and it totally gives us a chance to actually talk to other partners, other customers. Hey, check this out. We actually know what it does. I mean, we know what they do, but no, we have a better grasp, and we can say, for this would be a perfect thing for you. Well, since I still have it, we redeemed a free joke in the chat before we continue. So, does anyone know how you can tell the difference between an alligator and a crocodile is? Anyone? No? Well, one you'll see later, and then one you see after a while. That's how you can tell the difference. Womp, womp, womp. Who are you calling nerdy or geeky? Everybody. I guess before we close out, anyone want either of the Dans, Dan Lee, do you want to plug anything? We plugged the actual Tines stuff. Are either of you going to reInvent this year? We can see you there. We can see Tines or Lacework there at reInvent. Or do you want us to follow you on Twitter? Do you have anything?
I'm not popular enough to be on Twitter, man.
Yeah, we will absolutely. Lacework's gonna have a presence at reInvent. Really looking forward to that. Especially if you're going to be there as well, James. We could talk in person.
Yes.
Even.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
How about you, Kruthi? Does that get to be part of your job duty?
I don't think I'll be at reInvent this time. Haven't gotten a chance. But I would love to be a part of reInvent.
It's my favorite part of the job where I get to go out and like talk to people in person. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we missed that.
Currently, Tines is at GrrCon. We're at GrrCon right now.
Oh yeah. That's why you're in your hotel room.
Yeah, starting tomorrow, we'll be at GrrCon, just floating around, looking cool, and free T-shirts.
Oh, sweet!
Well, that's all you had to say, Dan.
Yeah, free T-shirts. Yeah. But reInvent, I believe Tines will be there. I don't know yet. But yes, you can hit us up anytime, anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. And then one last call to Tay. Tay is backstage. Tay Brooks. Do you have anything you want us to get out to anyone, or do we kind of cover everything? 1, 2, 3. Forever hold your peace. No? Okay. Well, with that said, thank you, Dan Lead and Dan Daggett, for coming on. I'd like to thank my co-host Kruthi as well, even though we had issues a little bit over the place, but that's okay. It's all good. And so from everyone here at Howdy Partner, I just want to say happy trails. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.